Alright, what's going on, guys? It's XLT here, bringing you another video on my channel, and I'm keeping my promise to you guys. A few uploads ago actually, I said that I was going to be bringing back my mock drafts, or that I was going to be making another one, and that it was going to be more deep and more evaluated, and I was going to take my time and look longer and harder at some players and figure out where I think they should really go in the draft, their best fits, stuff like that. And I kind of took a different approach with every team or with every situation. Obviously, every team has a different situation unless they have two picks in the draft, and that would be the Bills and the Browns. But I kind of just put myself in the GM shoes, and I used my own determinants of how I rank players and how I think about players and what I value in players. And stuff like that. So I took both of those accounts into mind, what the team situation is and where I would like to see these players go, and that's how I kind of formulated my mock draft. This is going to be my last mock draft, probably, that comes out before the combine, actually, because the combine is a big determiner in where people go in the draft. Players can lose and gain stock in an instant because of the combine. A lot of people have experienced bad combines, or they underperformed and their stock fell drastically, and other people performed very, very well and exceeded expectations, and their draft stock rose immensely, and they jumped from second or third or fourth round projections up to the first round and second round, and stuff like that. You've seen it happen a lot. It happened last year with John Ross, and Hassan Reddick, actually, too. Those are just a couple examples, but this is going to be my last mock draft, like I said, before the combine. After the combine, I'll make another one. Probably going to have a lot of moving around and a lot more evaluating to do and stuff like that, because obviously there's going to be interviews. We can gauge character, and obviously we're going to be able to see stats and stuff like that. So yeah, with that being said, let's jump right into this mock draft. Alright, let's get this mock draft started and underway. With the first overall pick, I have the Browns taking Sam Darnold, the quarterback from USC. Now, he's not my favorite quarterback in the draft, and honestly, I'm not really that high on him. He's very consistent. A lot of people say that he has the skills to be a pro-level quarterback, and obviously I think he has that, but he just has a lot of learning to do, and I don't know if Cleveland is the place where he's going to get the proper coaching to become the next best quarterback that I think that people think he can be, if that makes any sense. People think he has a ton of potential, and I definitely agree with that, but I don't know if Cleveland is going to tap all that potential out of him, because they might rush him into a starting job, and they don't really have any quarterbacks, and they have proven to not have the quarterback coaches or offensive coordinators around those young quarterbacks to get them to improve at all. But I think that John Dorsey and that front office don't really have a fond attraction to Josh Rosen. They would much rather take Sam Darnold, and I think that is who they are going to take. Jumping into the second pick, this is kind of controversial. I've talked to some friends about it, some people about it, and they don't really agree with it all that much, but they can see it happening. And that would be the Giants at the number 2 spot, taking Saquon Barkley, the running back out of Penn State. A lot of people want to draft Josh Rosen at this spot, and I just think that the Giants are going to try and squeeze a couple more years out of Eli. They got Dave Gettleman back. Him and Eli are very, very close, and I think that they both want to try and play out the rest of Eli's career as a Giant. And I think that they like Davis Webb in that organization. I don't know why they. It was obviously Ben McAdoo's decision to not play Davis Webb and to play Geno Smith instead of Davis Webb when he benched Eli, which was the stupidest move the entire football season. But I think that Davis Webb could be a good quarterback. We're going to have to tell through the preseason, and I think that if Eli struggles, they'll get him some starts. But I like Saquon Barkley. They haven't really had a very good running back since Tiki Barber. Ahmad Bradshaw and Brandon Jacobs were serviceable, but they weren't super good running backs, and Saquon Barkley is a generational player. You can't really pass him up at this position. And plus, next year, you might have a shot at another quarterback, or in 2 years, you'll have a shot at another quarterback, depending on how Eli ages and stuff like that, and how far he regresses over the next couple seasons. With the third overall pick, I have the Colts taking Bradley Chubb, the defensive end from NC State. Probably one of the better defensive players in this draft, probably one of the more safer picks in this draft. The Colts need help everywhere, besides the quarterback position, but that's dependent on whether or not Andrew Luck is healthy. But they need help pretty much everywhere, except for safety and the interior defensive line and quarterback. That's about it. Those are the only places that they're safe at. So anything is up for grabs. I don't think there's an offensive lineman that is good enough to be taken at this spot, but I do think that there are very good offensive linemen in this year's draft. But I just think Bradley Chubb gives them the most value. He's probably one of the better defensive players, like I just said. I think he's pretty good. I have him graded out as one of my better defensive linemen, if he's not the top defensive lineman in this year's draft, in terms of my grades and how I evaluate players and stuff like that. But he's a nitty-gritty type of player. He's going to give you 110% every snap, and his skill set is very, very wide. He's not just a one-trick pony. He doesn't just rush the passer. He can be effective in the run game, and he can rush the passer. And I think him being opposite of Jabal Sheard on that Colts defensive line is going to help them out a lot because they need help wherever they can get it. With the number 4 pick, I have the Browns taking Minkah Fitzpatrick, the defensive back from Alabama. Now, I have him labeled as a defensive back because he has played a good amount of nickel corner, a good amount of outside corner, and a good amount of safety at Alabama. Obviously, last year he played strictly safety, but the year before, he played outside outside corner and nickel corner for the Crimson Tide. A lot of people are saying, oh, if Jalen Ramsey can switch from safety to corner, then Minkah Fitzpatrick can play anywhere. He can play nickel corner, he can play outside corner, and he can play safety. That's not true because once Jalen Ramsey switched to corner, he played corner, and he has played only corner since he's been in the NFL. And I don't like the comparison. Jalen Ramsey is way more physical, at least with the receivers on the outside, and he is just an overall better player, and he's way faster, and his footwork's way better. But I can't remember it's Greg something that the name of the Cleveland Browns defensive coordinator is, but he's kind of said he wanted to play positionless football where he wanted to be able to move a lot of players around in different positions and get them different looks and confuse offenses and stuff like that. And I guess he tried to do that with Jabril Peppers, but it didn't really work out that well. Minkah Fitzpatrick is your replacement. Obviously, you went quarterback with the first overall pick. The running back that could have been your franchise running back isn't available because he got taken with the 2nd pick in my draft. So Minkah Fitzpatrick, one of the better defensive players in this draft, probably the best defensive back, corner, safety, however you want to play it. I think that's the pick that you have to go with. All right, now moving on to the 5th pick, the Broncos. I have them taking Baker Mayfield, the quarterback from Oklahoma. Now, this is kind of a toss-up. If they get Kirk Cousins in free agency, I don't think they'll go after a quarterback, but this is me being hypothetical. I do think that they will land him, but this is me kind of having a hypothetical thing and saying that somebody else gets Kirk Cousins. I'm not sure who gets him, but let's just say somebody else gets him. I think they'll take Baker Mayfield. I know that the Broncos front office is super, super high on both him and Josh Allen, and I think John Elway sees a lot of himself in Josh Allen, and John Elway is not very good at drafting quarterbacks, but I think that they could draft Josh Allen here. But I think my ideal pick where I would want Baker to end up, because I'm a huge Baker Mayfield fan, where I think he would end up, his best fit would probably be in Denver with a lot of veteran wide receivers around him. You've got guys like Emmanuel Sanders. You've got a good emerging tight end. Oh man, what's that Denver tight end's name? I can't remember him. I can't remember his name at the moment, but I know that he is fairly good and that he's an emerging tight end. You've also got Jake Butt, who can be a young option in a couple of years, or actually next year, because he'll be fully cleared to play then. And you've got good guys around him in that system, and they're only one good quarterback away. A lot of people have said they're only just a good quarterback away from being back in the playoffs. So I think if Baker Mayfield can come in and have an immediate impact, then this is a very good pick for them. Moving on to the 6th pick, the New York Jets. I have them taking Josh Rosen, the QB from UCLA. A lot of people have him going in the top 5, and honestly, him in this draft falling down to number 6 where I have him is an absolute steal for the New York Jets. He's the most pro-ready quarterback in this entire draft. He's got the pocket ability. He's the best pocket passer in this draft, rather I say that. He's got the best throwing motion. Baker Mayfield statistically has the best accuracy, and I think he does on the field as well, but Josh Allen just puts the ball. He just throws a perfect ball pretty much every time it comes out of his hand. The spiral, the tightness, the speed, the velocity, all that stuff on the ball is very, very good. There's not really a lot of mechanical stuff you're going to have to worry about with Josh Rosen either. It's just more of his character and getting him adapted to the pro football world. He's going to have to work a lot harder than he did in UCLA. He's going to have to take stuff a lot more seriously than he did at UCLA, and that's not going to be a huge issue, but I mean, it could be, just depending on how the Jets handle it. With the number 7 pick, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers selecting Quentin Nelson, the guard from Notre Dame. Now, this may be a little bit early for some people. This may be a little bit late for some people, but I think that the Buccaneers have not had a very good offensive line, especially interiorly. Ali Marpet is a very, very good center. I think he's pretty good, especially for how young he is. Their tackles are okay. DeMar Dotson's getting a little bit older, and I don't know who their other tackle is. But I know that their interior offensive line with J.R. Sweezy, and I don't remember their guard's name. I'm not too good with people who, I don't want to call them irrelevant, but they're not good, so I don't really pay attention to them. But I know that their interior offensive line, especially at the guard spots, is very, very weak. A lot lot of people, I saw a mock draft earlier where Saquon Barkley fell all the way to the 7th pick, and I thought that was absolutely absurd, but I think Quenton Nelson fits very good here. They have a needed offensive line. I don't think their defense needs a ton of help. They just got bit by the injury bug last year. They do have one position of need on the defense, or a couple positions of need, but their biggest would on the defensive side of the ball, I think, would be at the defensive end pass rusher position. So I just think that Quenton Nelson's a very good fit here. He'll help the offensive line. He'll help the run game because he's a mauler at the guard position. He is a very, very good run blocker, and we've seen that throughout the season with Jordan Adams' success at Notre Dame this year. With the number 8 pick, I have the Bears going Calvin Ridley, the wide receiver from Alabama. A lot of people have a cornerback here. I've seen a lot of people mock Josh Jackson, the cornerback from Iowa here. But I think that Calvin Ridley is the best fit here. Obviously, you do need cornerbacks, and that's a big need for the Chicago Bears, but I think surrounding Mitchell Trubisky with some weapons is probably your number one concern at this point. Just the fact that he didn't really have a lot of receiving options last year kind of hindered his development, but I think getting Cameron Meredith back this year, getting Zach Miller back healthy, and getting Calvin Ridley in the draft, I think really helps his development as he's able to target more people and spread the ball around to people that he trusts to make plays, not just some guys that are free agent pickups or waiver wire pickups, not waiver wire, but practice squad pickups from other teams and stuff like that. These are guys he can really trust and that he can really be confident throwing the ball to. With the 9th overall pick in the draft, I have the 49ers selecting Denzel Ward, the cornerback from Ohio State. John Lynch is the new GM there. Obviously, he's a defensive mind. He's a Hall of Famer. I think he was on the ballot this year, but I don't think he'll make it. I don't think he did make it. He'll make it in the next couple of years. He was a great safety for the Broncos and for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But with the 49ers here, obviously, with Denzel Ward, I think he's a very good defensive mind, and I think that he's going to be a very good GM. And I think that he's going to stick with the defensive side of the ball because the secondary is a very big need in that defense. The other needs would be playmakers on the outside and interior offensive linemen. But the best interior offensive lineman in the draft has already gone with Quenton Nelson. Going to the Bucs at 7, and the best wide receiver in the draft just went the pick before you, so why not take, in my opinion, probably the best pro-ready corner in the draft. I like Josh Jackson better because I'm a big fan of ball hawks, and I think that they're more effective and they're more game-changing than just somebody who's a speedy man cover corner. Obviously, Marshawn Lattimore showed that he could change games this year, and guys in years past like Patrick Peterson, even though he's more a little bit of a ball hawk, but he's a shutdown corner. Richard Sherman, he's more of a ball hawk, but I guess I'm retracting my statement. I guess I think the ball hawks are more important, but I think Denzel Ward will fit in great in San Francisco, and he will definitely address a position of need for that 49ers football team. Jumping to the 10th pick, I have the Raiders selecting Roquan Smith, the linebacker from Georgia. My favorite linebacker in the entire draft, my favorite defensive player in the entire draft because I played linebacker in high school. I can relate a lot to what this guy does and the effort that he puts out there every single play. He's a sideline-to-sideline player. He can cover pretty much anything on the field, and that's in terms of run and in terms of pass. A lot of people have questions about his size, but I don't think that that's as big of a question. I think that the way that he plays up not the way that he plays up, but the way that he plays more than makes up for his lack of size. A lot of people have Tremaine Edmonds here from Virginia Tech, but I just can't see that. I think that Roquan's a traditional inside linebacker, and he'll fit in great in that Raiders system, especially next to Navarro Bowman. Presuming that they re-sign him, but I think that they should. If they plan on drafting Roquan Smith, I think re-signing Navarro Bowman would be a great move, and I just think that Roquan Smith being the best linebacker in this draft, surprising that he didn't go earlier. I think you have to draft him here, and he's going to be your franchise middle linebacker for the next 10-12 years. Moving on to the 11th pick, I have the Miami Dolphins taking Josh Jackson, the cornerback from Iowa. There's a lot of needs on this Dolphins team. Interior defensive line, interior offensive line, linebackers, cornerbacks. There's a lot of needs, but the best linebackers have gone, in my opinion. I'm not super high on Tremaine Edmonds. I've watched some film on him, but I haven't watched a ton, and from what I've seen, I'm not a huge fan of his game. I know that people say that he's an extreme athlete and that his ceiling is super high, but I just don't I guess value super athleticism as much as I value actual football skills and football knowledge and football IQ and stuff like that. But drafting Josh Jackson does address a serious need on your defense. Xavier Howard is your only competent cornerback. You had to go out and sign Byron Maxwell in free agency, for crying out loud, or trade for him or whatever you did, but signing that guy was not a very good move because he ended up getting cut, and then the Seahawks signed him, which doesn't really make any sense. But cornerback is a huge need for them. Josh Jackson, the best ball-hawking cornerback in this entire draft. He led the FBS in interceptions. I'm really high on him, and he's tall and lanky too. If he runs anywhere in the 4.4s, he will not be available at this spot. He'll probably go earlier, obviously, if he's not available at 11. But I could see him going to the Bears or the 49ers before this pick, depending on how his combine goes. Jumping to the Bengals at the 12th pick, I have them taking Mike McGlinchey, the tackle from Notre Dame. It's kind of a toss-up between him, Connor Williams, and Orlando Brown. We're just going to have to wait for the combine, see the bench press reps, see their mobility and stuff like that. But, I mean, obviously we can see their mobility on the field, but it just comes down to them. But I think Mike McGlinchey is just better. I think he's stronger. I think he's more physical. And I think he's a little bit quicker than Orlando Brown is. Orlando Brown's kind of stiff and he's not very mobile, but that's just my opinion on Mike McGlinchey. And the Bengals are a team that has had no success drafting in the first round over the last like 4 or 5 years. Their last few draft picks have not been very good, and I think that they need to address tackle very much, as they let Andrew Whitworth walk and didn't have a backup to replace him that was competent to any extent of the word. So drafting Mike McGlinchey is going to address a serious hole among that Bengals offensive line. Going to number 13, I have the Redskins taking Josh Allen, the quarterback from Wyoming. Obviously, Kirk Cousins is probably not going to be the quarterback next year, as they have signed Alex Smith to a 4-year, $80 million contract. I think it was 80. No, it's 4 years, $91 million. And I think that they're going to draft a quarterback to learn underneath him. If they don't, then they are absolutely the stupidest franchise in the entire NFL. They're dumber than the Browns if they don't draft a quarterback with this pick to learn under an aging Alex Smith. And that would be Josh Allen, the quarterback from Wyoming, who I have them taking. He's a big arm talent. He can make pretty much any throw you need him to. It's just the inconsistency and the inaccuracy. That's a lot coming from his receivers dropping balls and him not getting a lot of time to throw from his offensive line. But, you know, stats are stats. That's how it is. You can't just say, oh, I wouldn't have not thrown any interceptions on the season if the defensive backs had just dropped the ball. You know, you got to be accountable for your statistics and your performance and stuff like that. And I'm holding him accountable. You know, that stuff, it can't be excused because it actually happened. So him falling all the way to 13, I think, is a steal because I think he has probably the highest potential and the highest ceiling out of all of these quarterbacks. He reminds me a lot of Carson Wentz, but a little bit more of Cam Newton with the inaccuracies. Carson Wentz was pretty accurate in college. Cam Newton just had a huge rocket arm and wasn't really accurate, but, you know, I'm not in the business of pro comparisons because I might be wrong, but that's who I just think. That's who Josh Allen reminds me of when I watch him play. Jumping to the 14th pick, the Packers are in desperate need of a pass rusher, and that's the position I have them addressing here. They take Marcus Davenport, the defensive end from UTSA. Small school guy, not a lot of people knew who he was. I have a friend that goes to North Texas, and I'm like, hey, and he knows that I'm big into football and big into scouting and stuff like that, and I was like, hey, if you go to any North Texas's games this year, let me know if there's any guys that stand out to you, like give me their numbers, give me a game log or something like that. He was like, yeah, for sure. And he said that Marcus Davenport absolutely killed them, so he let me know who he was. In my first couple mock drafts, I don't think I had him very high, but I watched some film on this guy, and by God, is he a freak athlete. I think that he probably has the most upside and the most potential in this entire draft. And he's one of my favorite players in the entire draft. He is an absolute beast. A lot of people were already dipping his draft stock and already discounting him as a first-round pick because of his performance in the Senior Bowl, at least in the practice portion. But then he got in the game and he really showed that he could be a game changer and that he could get to the quarterback and stop the run and all the stuff that we needed. We had questions about that, whether he could do that against top-level talent. He absolutely killed Brian O'Neill, the left tackle or the right tackle from Pitt, and he answered all the questions that we needed him to. So I think that Marcus Davenport is going to be a great pick for the Packers, who are in desperate need of a 3-4 pass rusher. Moving on to the 15th pick, the Arizona Cardinals. I have them taking Mason Rudolph, the quarterback from Oklahoma State. Quarterbacks are just flying off the board here in the first round of XLT's Mock Draft 3.0. But you have to address this position. Carson Palmer is no longer a member of your team, nor is he a member of any team in the National Football League because he retired this offseason. But Mason Rudolph, I think, is the only other option that you have here at quarterback. You can't really afford to not take a first-round caliber guy. I mean, if you want to wait and sit on a guy like Luke Falk or Kyle Lauletta or Riley Ferguson, then go ahead and be my guest, but I don't think that you can pass up a first-round talent like Mason Rudolph. Here at this position, when you have no quarterback, you literally don't have one because Drew Stanton and Blaine Gabbert aren't the guys. They're both older, aging, and they're not any good, even though Blaine Gabbert looked like he could, why wasn't he playing like that when he was in Jacksonville when they drafted him? But, they've just been journeyman career backups, and they are not the answer to your quarterback situation. So I think that they go out and they answer that immediately in the first round with Mason Rudolph. Moving on to the 16th pick, I have the Ravens taking Courtland Sutton, the wide receiver from SMU. A lot of people have been saying this is where Connor Williams or Mike McGlinchey or Orlando Brown belong, and I don't think that the Ravens have a huge need at left or right tackle. They drafted Ronnie Stanley, was that 2 drafts ago, I'm pretty sure? It was it was 2 drafts ago, and he's been one of the better offensive tackles in the NFL. He's not obviously up in the top 3 or anything like that, but he's a very, very good left tackle, especially for how young he is, and I just don't see why people are saying that offensive tackle is the way to go. I think that Joe Flacco needs more weapons because Brashad Perryman has had trouble staying on the field. They got rid of Kamar Aiken. Their tight end situation is iffy, and I think that adding a big bodies, field-stretching, red zone target in Courtland Sutton is a very, very good move for them. I think that he adds a lot of versatility to their offense, and he adds more levels than just having 2 speed guys on the outside and Mike Williams and Mike Williams and Brashad Perryman. I think that this guy adds a jump ball and a go-get-it type of aspect to that offense that is very much needed. Moving on to the 17th pick, I have the Los Angeles Chargers taking Daron Payne, the defensive tackle from Alabama. There's a lot of different ways you could go with this Chargers team. You could go offensive tackle and protect Phillip Rivers for the next couple years, or you could add on to that defense. You could take a linebacker, you could take an interior defensive lineman, and I think that they need to address interior defensive line more than anything. I think they can get offensive tackles later in the 2nd and 3rd rounds, but I think that taking a defensive lineman here is very, very good, especially a guy like Daron Payne, who is a very, very big body at that defensive tackle position, and he is extremely athletic. We saw that in the championship game and in the semifinal game against Clemson, how effective he could be and how athletic he was in stopping the run and stopping the pass, both with his hands and in getting to the quarterback. And I think overall he's a very, very good player, and I think he will fit in very well with that San Diego defense. Or not San Diego, Los Angeles. Geez, that's still so hard for me to wrap my head around that they're in Los Angeles now. Moving on to the 18th pick, the Seahawks finally stop neglecting their biggest need, and they address the offensive line with their first pick in this year's draft, and that would be Orlando Brown, the tackle from Oklahoma. Pete Carroll still thinks that their biggest need is running back. That's not why you're not having success running the ball. You're not having success running the ball because your offensive line is like dead last in the NFL, I'm pretty sure. You traded for Dwayne Brown. He has still a few more years, a handful of years left in this league, but getting a guy like Orlando Brown, he can play left and right tackle, but I think he'd be better at right tackle because he's not very mobile. His footwork isn't very good, but he's very, very good in the run, and I think that right tackles have shaped themselves into that mold. That's kind of the mold that right tackles have taken in the NFL this year, or over the last couple years, and so I think that fitting Orlando Brown there would be a very, very good thing for the Seattle Seahawks. Another pick that they could take would be a defensive back or Derwin James or something like that, but I don't think that their biggest need is there. I think that it would be on the offensive line and helping out your franchise quarterback, Russell Wilson, because he's been having to run around to save his own head for the last couple years, and you've totally ignored that, which is a dumb move, Pete Carroll and the Seahawks front office. Moving on to the 19th pick in the draft, I have the Dallas Cowboys selecting Rashaan Evans, the linebacker from Alabama, who really, really stood out in the college football playoffs this year against Oklahoma, or not against Oklahoma, against Clemson and against Georgia, and throughout the entire season. He's a very, very good athlete, and he runs sideline to sideline, much like Roquan Smith. But I just think that Roquan Smith is faster, and I think he's stronger. and I think he's just a little bit better in coverage, but Rashaan Evans could be very good in the NFL. There's a lot of executives and scouts that say they really, really like this guy and that they're very, very high on him, and a guy that, could fit into pretty much any defense you put him in. He's not obviously a pass rusher, but he could play any inside linebacker role you need him to, and pairing him with Sean Lee would be very good, considering that Sean Lee has had a little bit of injury trouble over the last couple years, and they need a guy that can step in and be a leader and take care of the defense despite Sean Lee not being there. We've seen Jaylon Smith have a little bit of success, but obviously he hasn't turned into the Jaylon Smith that we all expected him to be, but he did miss an entire football season with a injury, and you've got to give him a couple years to get acclimated to the NFL environment and the NFL game, and I think he could develop into a pretty good player, but you need some linebacker help. You need help all over the defense, but I think linebacker is a very big need. Moving on to the 20th pick, I have the Detroit Lions selecting Maurice Hurst, or Big Mo, from the University of Michigan. Obviously, he's a defensive tackle, and I really, really like this pick. Haloti Ngata obviously not getting any younger or any better. He's actually getting older and worse. So I think that helping out the interior of your defensive line would be a very good decision. Obviously, you have A'Shawn Robinson already on the inside, but adding another run stopper could be very, very good. He had 5.5 sacks, or not right, A'Shawn Robinson, but Mo Hurst had 5.5 sacks over the last couple of years, and he was Pro Football Focus's highest graded defensive tackle in college football. He I think he might have been the highest graded player overall, but don't quote me on that. I'm not entirely sure. I know he had a grade of like 96.4 or 96.1 or something like that, but he's a very, very good player, very well-rounded and a very good overall player. He's good in the pass game and in the running game, and he's kind of a do-it-all D tackle, and I think pairing him with a guy like A'Shawn Robinson will make that defensive line very formidable, especially in the NFC North, where you've got teams like the Packers, and you need to get after Aaron Rodgers, and you need to stop the run game that Chicago and Minnesota have, and you need to slow down and get to the quarterback against all those teams in the NFC North. With the 21st and 22nd picks, the Buffalo Bills will be picking. Obviously, as the Chiefs traded up to get Patrick Mahomes last year, they gave the Bills their first-round pick this year, and it traded out that they have back-to-back picks. So, I mean, they can pick either of these guys in either position. It doesn't really matter to me. But with their first pick, I have them taking Vita Vea from Washington, obviously the defensive tackle. I don't know if his name's Vita Vea or Vita Vea. I've heard both pronunciations, and I'm just not sure which one it is, and I haven't really done research on it, but I have done research on his film and his game, and I really, really like who he is. He's got a super high motor. The one concern that people have with him is that and then I kind of have with him too, is that he kind of takes plays off. One series he'll be super dominant, like 3 tackles, a couple pass rushes, stuff like that, and then the next series he just won't be effective at all. But I think he's a super high motor player. He gets to the quarterback, he makes plays in the running game, and he's super, super physical. He's a big guy. He's like 340 pounds, and I think that he's a very good athlete, especially for the size that he is. They have a hole, obviously, on that defensive line in Buffalo after they traded Marcel Darius, and I think that this guy could be a better Marcel Darius, and he'll be better in Buffalo than Marcel Darius ever was, and that's a bold statement, but I think this guy has great, great potential. With their second pick in a row, obviously number 22, I have the Buffalo Bills taking Billy Price, the offensive guard / center from Ohio State. Eric Woods sadly has to stop playing football in the NFL, or just ever. The doctor said he can no longer play football because he had an injury in his neck. So this is a very big need for them to fill. Billy Price obviously plays guard and center. So if they go out and somehow magically sign a center in free agency, then you can draft Billy Price to be your guard. Or if you can't find a center but you can find a guard in free agency, then Billy Price can be your center. However, whatever way you flip the coin, however it lands, I think Billy Price is your fit here because he can play interior offensive line and all 3 of the positions. He can play any of them. Very versatile, very good, and I like that fit in Buffalo. With the 23rd pick in this year's draft, I have the Los Angeles Rams taking Isaiah Oliver, the cornerback from Colorado. There's a lot of people that say out of the big 3 named cornerbacks that have come out of Colorado in the last couple of years, that being Ahkello Witherspoon, Chidobe Awuzie, and obviously Isaiah Oliver, a lot of people have said that they like Isaiah Oliver and that they think that he will be the better out of the 3, and I can definitely see that happening. He's not taller than Ahkello Witherspoon, but he's a more fluid athlete, and he's a better cover corner. Ahkello Witherspoon just really outsized the wide receivers and just got to make plays because of how big he was, and Isaiah Oliver makes a little bit more plays, and he's shorter or the same size as all the wide receivers he goes up against. I don't really see a lot of flaws in his game, honestly. honestly. Maybe his run support. Actually, no, he's pretty physical in the run game. But I just say that I don't know why people see a lot of flaws. He just doesn't have a lot of interceptions, doesn't make a ton of plays, and he's not as solid as a cover corner as Denzel Ward, so I can see why people have ranked him lower. But I personally really like him, and I think that he could go higher than this. But this is where I have him falling ideally. This would be a very good landing spot for him, and it would be a steal for the Rams to get him at 23. Moving on to the 24th pick in the draft, I have the Carolina Panthers selecting Derwin James, the safety from Florida State University. He's a guy that can play all over the field. He'll play wherever you need to put him. He's all football all the time. He's a high motor guy. There's a lot of people that had him going as early as like number, I don't know, maybe 11. I think I've seen him go 10 or 11, but I think that this is an ideal landing spot for him. He's not the best guy in coverage, but he's really good against the run, and he's a really physical safety. He can cover tight ends very well, and I think that him sitting behind Mike Adams and Kurt Coleman for a couple years would be great for his development, especially when they decide to use him. They could even use him this year in some packages, like a dime linebacker if they need him to add a little bit more coverage on the field. But he's a guy that kind of reminds me a little bit of Shaq Thompson. He's in that situation where he could play safety or he could play linebacker, and obviously Shaq Thompson being a very good outside linebacker, I think Derwin James can transition to be a very good safety for that Carolina Panthers team. At number 25, I have the Tennessee Titans taking Harold Landry, the outside linebacker slash D end out of Boston College. I think he fills an immediate need for that team. They are not getting any younger at the pass rusher outside linebacker position. Brian Orakpo's like 31, 32. Derek Morgan's like 29, so they've got to get younger and they've got to get better, and I think Harold Landry is a perfect fit for this defense. He played in a 3-4 defense in Boston College, and I think that him transitioning into the NFL, playing in a 3-4 defense will make it very easy for him, and I think that the Titans is a very good fit. He's a very good player, led the nation in sacks, not this season that just happened, but the season before that. So yeah, I think he's got a lot of potential too, and he can improve much in the run game, and I think that once he adds that defensive run game to his arsenal, I think he'll be a very good player. Moving on to the 26th pick, I have the Atlanta Falcons addressing, in my opinion, their biggest need, which would be offensive guard, and I have them selecting Isaiah Wynn from Georgia, from the University of Georgia. He played center and guard, but I think his true position would be offensive guard. He held up very good in the national championship. He didn't really let Daron Payne or Deshaun Hand handle him. I see, handle him, but I'm so bad at jokes, but he didn't let Deshaun Hand or Daron Payne just absolutely manhandle him the entire night. And he didn't really let any of Oklahoma's interior defensive linemen do that to him either. And those were on the two biggest stages that he had played on all year. Obviously, he had played Alabama early in the year, but the offensive guards in Atlanta aren't getting any younger. There's guys like Andy Levitre, and I can't remember who their other guard is, but those guys are both in their, one of the guards is a little bit younger, but Andy Levitre is in his 30s. He's not getting any better. He didn't play very good for them. He let up a lot of interior pressure. So I think getting a guy like Isaiah Wynn to come in and replace Andy Levitre would be a very good situation for them. Moving now to the 27th pick in this year's draft, I have the Saints selecting Malik Jefferson, the linebacker from Texas, who shared a Big 12 Player of the Year honors, or Defensive Player of the Year honors, with Obo Okoronkwo from Oklahoma, who I like very much as well, because nobody in the Big 12 plays defense, and these guys are two very exceptional defensive players. That's besides the point. Malik Jefferson from Texas, I think he fills an immediate hole on that Saints defense. There's not a lot of holes. They're very good at cornerback. Ken Crawley, I don't know if Delvin Breaux's still on that team, but last time I thought he was. Marshawn Lattimore, obviously Defensive Rookie of the Year. Their safety position with Von Bell and P.J. Williams. You know, P.J. Williams is a good player. I don't care what anybody says. He made one bad play, so what? It just happened to cost his team the game. People make bad plays all the time, and one bad play just happened to, you know, cost his team a game. It's, you know, he's going to be remembered for that his entire career, but I think he's a good player regardless of what anybody else says because of that play. Got a little sidetracked there, went on a little bit of a rant, but Malik Jefferson, I think he fills an immediate hole on that Saints defense. They don't have a lot of holes, like I just said, literally just repeated myself, but we're going to keep going. He's a very good linebacker, he's a very good athlete, standing at 6'3", 240. The way that he runs around the field, it doesn't really seem like he's 6'3", 240. It seems like he's 6'1", 225, but you know, the way that he is able to use his athleticism to his advantage is very good, and I think that at the next level that'll be his height. or not his height, but that'll be his biggest strength. He's going to have to work on zone coverage a little bit, but that's nothing that, you know, can't be fixed. It's not a huge need, or it's not a huge detriment to his game or anything like that. With the 28th pick in this year's draft, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers selecting Tremaine Edmunds, the linebacker from Virginia Tech. A lot of people are supposedly super high on this guy, and I'm not really sure why. There's not a lot at me about his game that jumps out and just screams generational talent, but apparently Todd McShay and Mel Kiper think he's, you know, Jesus on earth. I don't understand it. I think Roquan Smith is leaps and bounds above this guy. Apparently, if you're 6'5", or if you're 6'4 and a quarter, 6'3 and a quarter, whatever this guy is, it automatically makes you the best player in the draft, which doesn't make any sense. Roquan Smith is, in my opinion, leaps and bounds better than Tremaine Johnson in terms of football IQ and actually playing a true middle linebacker position, which is, this guy may be drafted to play that, and I don't know if that's his true position. But with the Steelers, I think they need to find a replacement for Ryan Shazier as fast as they can. My ideal pick here would have been Rashaan Evans, but I watched a little bit more of his tape, heard some rumors from league sources floating around that a lot of teams really liked him, and the Cowboys were a team that I thought needed a middle linebacker. So Rashaan Evans goes there. Nevertheless, Tremaine Edmunds falls to the Steelers at 28, which, depending on how his career pans out, or whatever Todd McShay and Mel Kiper say come draft time, this may be the steal of the draft, which I don't think it will be. But yeah, Tremaine Edmunds, 28 to the Steelers. Moving on to number 29, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Not a lot of holes on their team, but they do have a couple needs. It would be tackle, and I think tight end. And tight end is the position I have them addressing here. Hayden Hurst, the tight end from South Carolina, a very good player, former baseball player. He's a very good athlete. He runs the ball very well, and when he gets in the open field, he's pretty fast for a tight end, a guy his size. A lot of people want Mark Andrews here. I don't really see a huge need for Mark Andrews here. He's a little bit slower, plus he played in an offense that passed it 1.5 million freaking times a game. South Carolina was a little more pro-style, a little more conservative offense, and Hayden Hurst really stood out in that scheme, and I really liked him. He absolutely tore up Missouri. I think he had 2 or 3 touchdowns on Missouri's football team, so he played very good against them, and I think that he will be a great fit, giving him a year or two to learn behind Mercedes Lewis and develop into a very good tight end. With the 30th pick in the draft, the Vikings select Connor Williams. This may or may not be a dumb write-in for me. I've got like my paper sitting right in front of me, but I've seen drafts where Connor Williams goes in the 5th, not in the 5th round. Jeez, he goes 5th overall, or he goes 15th overall, or he goes 30th overall, or he's not even in the 1st round. But Connor Williams from Texas, I think he's a very good player. Him, Mike McGlinchey, and Orlando Brown are all battling it out for the #1 spot. Once I see the combine and their fluidity and their ability to pass block and their bench reps and stuff like that and their speed, I mean, speed isn't huge for a tackle, but it shows their fluidity and their athleticness, or not athleticness, geez, athleticism. Once I see that, I'll be a little bit better able to evaluate them. I hate watching offensive lineman tape. I'd rather watch paint dry on a wall. I just can't stand watching offensive lineman tape. I'm probably not that good at evaluating them either. I just really hate watching them play football. I mean, they're probably the most valuable people on the entire team. I just hate watching their film. Not to say that they're bad players, but I just don't take a ton of time to watch each and every single offensive lineman, mainly because there's 5. You know, there's 5 of them, and you have to watch them every play. It's just, it's not, and plus it's not a very high, you know, excitement or movement or anything like that. They don't make plays, you know, that they are just the people who, you know, sit there and they have to do the dirty work. But yeah, that all being said, Connor Williams falls 30 to the Vikings. They need offensive line help. It was shown in the NFC Championship game. The Eagles got to them, got pressure, and it made Case Keenum look like an absolute idiot, throwing like 2 interceptions, or 1 interception, I think it was. But he did not look good in that game, and it was because of the Eagles' pass rush, so it automatically triggered a red flag for them, saying we need to go draft offensive linemen or address that need in free agency, and I think they do that here with Connor Williams from Texas. Alright, coming down on the last 2 picks here in the draft. At 31, the Patriots, I have them selecting Jaire Alexander, a cornerback from Louisville. We are uncertain of Malcolm Butler's situation in New England, but if I was him, or what I think is going to happen, I think that he should leave and explore other options, because Bill Belichick absolutely shafted him in the Super Bowl, didn't let him play possibly the biggest game of his career, arguably. I think, obviously, his first Super Bowl was his biggest one, but we didn't know that. going into the game. But this is going to be a huge game for him, and he got absolutely screwed on that. So that being said, I don't think he's in New England next year, and that opens up a huge need because Eric Rowe is not good. We found that out because Nick Foles dots you up and throws 2 touchdowns on you. You're not good because Nick Foles, I'm not saying he's bad, but, you know, he's not a great quarterback. He's no Carson Wentz. He's no Tom Brady. But if he's dotting you up in the Super Bowl, you know you've got some needs. And one of those needs being cornerback. Obviously, they address it here. Alexander, I think he's a very good ball hawk, and he's a very good playmaker, much like Josh Jackson, but I think he's better just in man-to-man situations. I think he's a little bit better. I think if we would have got to see him play a little bit more this year, that he would be higher valued. But since he was banged up and battling injuries throughout the season, his draft stock obviously took a little bit of a hit. But if he can perform pretty good at the combine, I could see him jumping up a little bit. But I think he's a very, very good cornerback, and he addresses a huge need that the Patriots have, barring the non-return of Malcolm Butler. With the last pick in this draft, I have the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles selecting Kolton Miller, the offensive tackle from UCLA. Obviously protected Josh Rosen the entire season on the blind side. Only a couple games stood out to me where he struggled, and that would have been the Washington game and the Texas A&M game. Both those games, those defenses are very good, so I could see why he struggled against them, but not a ton of question marks pop up when I look at this guy. I think he's pretty solid. Obviously, the Eagles need to address left tackle. Jason Peters may not ever play a down again in the NFL, and he's a future Hall of Famer. I just think that left tackle is a need that they need to address. Their left tackle who played in the Super Bowl, his name isn't coming to me right now, but I thought he played very good. But then again, the Patriots also have 0 pass rush as they sacked Nick Foles a total of 0 times. But yeah, left tackle being a need for them. I think that picking them one up at the end of the first round isn't a bad option, and I think Kolton Miller is the guy they go with. Alright guys, that's going to do it for the mock draft 3.0. I hope you did enjoy. If you did, leave a like down below. It means a lot. It's greatly appreciated. And I know this was a little bit of a longer video, but I did want to go in depth and talk about the players and the picks and the situation and all that good stuff. I could do a video where I go over the entire draft. I just pick a team, or I go through all the teams and I go over their picks and I pick players for all the positions and stuff like that. Let me know if you would like me to do a video like that down in the comment section below. But yeah, like I said, that's going to do it for the video. Leave comments about the picks, players, your opinions, all that good stuff. I do enjoy reading them, and I do enjoy your thoughts and your positive comments and stuff like that. So yeah, this has been XLT signing out.